Okay, so I want to start today with a number that honestly I had to read 3 times just to make sure I wasn't seeing things.
Yeah, it's a heavy one, isn't it?
It really is. It completely changes how you look at youth sports. So this comes from the Big Sister Impact Report. And it says that 43% of girls who identified as sporty in primary school.
Which is a massive group.
Right. We're talking about the girls who loved moving, who loved competing. They were always on the playground. 43% of them completely disengaged from sports once they hit their teenage years.
Almost half of that talent pool just evaporates.
It's gone.
And that is exactly the cliff edge we are standing on today. But there's a nuance here that usually gets missed, and it's honestly why we're doing this deep dive for you today.
Because the initial reaction is usually pretty predictable, right?
Exactly. When organizations see a stat like that, a 43% dropout, the knee-jerk reaction is almost always marketing.
Right.
They think, oh, we need a better recruitment campaign, we need pinker posters, we need to tell them cycling is cool.
The classic shrink it and pink it strategy. Just make the flyer look prettier and they'll come back.
Exactly that. But we've got a stack of about 20 documents here today, ranging from deep academic studies by Peters et al., to strategic reports from the Danish Cycling Union, the DCU, and of course, the Big Sister Project.
And they all point to a much more uncomfortable truth.
They do. It is not a recruitment problem. It's an ecosystem design problem.
So we aren't just talking about getting girls onto bikes. We're talking about the fact that the world they're riding into, it wasn't built for them in the first place.
Precisely. The analogy I really like to use is this. If you put a fish in a tank with toxic water, the solution isn't to add more fish.
You have to change the water.
You change the water. So today's deep dive is about how we transform elite cycling for women by fixing the water, looking at culture, metrics, and leadership.
And what I found so fascinating going through this research is that while we're focusing on the Danish model today, this applies to almost every high-performance environment you can think of. We're going to look at the default male legacy, something called the dream deficit, and why treating everyone equally might actually be the most unfair thing you can do.
That distinction between equality and equity, that's going to be the linchpin of the solution later on. But let's start with the diagnosis. Why are those girls leaving? Why is the water toxic?
Yeah, let's unpack the dream deficit, because the Let Her Dream 2025 report makes a pretty bold claim. It says these girls aren't quitting because they're lazy, and they aren't quitting because they lack grit.
No, and that is a dangerous myth we need to bust right now. The dropout rate is a totally rational response to friction.
A rational response.
Yes. Think about it. If every time you went to do a hobby, you felt unsafe, judged, or overlooked, you would quit too.
Anyone would.
Right. It isn't a lack of resilience. The report specifically calls it confidence erosion.
Confidence erosion. That implies a process, not a character trait. It's something happening to them.
It is a process. Girls aren't born lacking confidence. The environment chips away at it through what the research describes as a judgment culture.
Where they feel constantly watched.
Exactly. They feel judged on their bodies rather than their skills. And eventually, the emotional cost of just showing up becomes too high.
There was one statistic in there that really grounded this for me. It said nearly half of girls are uncomfortable with changing rooms or PE contexts. And 15%.
More than 1 in 10.
Right, more than 1 in 10 have actually skipped school just to avoid it.
Think about the psychological weight of that for a second. You are willing to compromise your education to avoid the shame or discomfort of that environment.
It's tragic, honestly.
It is. And if you don't feel safe changing into your kit, you are certainly not going to feel safe pushing your physical limits on a bike track.
It creates this massive barrier before they even get to the starting line. And this links back to that concept of the default male. I think we sort of know what that means intuitively, but how does the source material, specifically the DBU development plan, define it here?
Well, it puts it very starkly. For over 100 years, sport has been synonymous with men. The structures, the training schedules, the equipment, even the medical research, it was all built by men for men.
There was that scoping review by Peters et al. That highlighted this massive research gap.
Yes, that was striking. In a review of talent development studies, only about 10% focused exclusively on female athletes.
Just 10%.
Just 10%.
Yeah.
So we are taking models designed for male physiology. things like metabolic rates, Q angles in the knees, recovery times, hormonal cycles, and we're pasting them onto female athletes.
And when it doesn't work, or when the girls get injured, we blame the athlete.
Exactly. We're essentially treating girls like small men.
And then on top of the physiology, you layer on the financial aspect. In cycling specifically, this pay-to-play barrier seems significantly higher than in other sports.
Oh, it's a massive gatekeeper. Cycling isn't like running where you just need shoes or soccer where you just need a ball and a field.
You need the bike.
You need the bike, which is incredibly expensive, plus the maintenance, the insurance, the travel to races. The environmental factors study discusses this in detail. If the system relies on families to foot the bill for everything, you aren't filtering for the most talented athletes. You're filtering for the wealthiest ones.
So you have a system that is expensive, historically designed for boys' physiology, and culturally filled with judgment for girls. No wonder 43% walk away.
Exactly. It's almost surprising the number isn't higher.
Seriously. But here is where it gets tricky. Let's say a girl survives that ecosystem. She stays in the system. How do we know if she's actually talented?
This brings us to part 2, flawed talent identification.
Because right now, reading through the talent identification and development processes paper, it seems like a lot of selection comes down to a coach standing by the side of the road squinting and saying, yeah, she looks fast.
The infamous eyeball test. It's incredibly prevalent. The source notes that when there is no formal, data-driven recruitment structure, selection relies entirely on a single coach's gut feel.
Which, let's be honest, is often just a fancy word for bias.
Often, yes. If your mental model of a cyclist is a grim-faced, hyper-competitive teenage boy, you're going to overlook a girl who might have different physiological markers or a different psychological profile, but huge potential.
You're looking for performance now rather than potential for later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that? Because presumably, we still need to select people for teams. We can't just invite everyone to the Olympics.
Right. The solution lies in what the researchers call multidimensional assessments. There was a really interesting study in our stack by Lair et al. Focusing on U15 female footballers, which parallels the cycling issue perfectly.
Walk us through that. What makes it multidimensional?
So they found that if you only use objective motor tests, like sprint times or dribbling speed, you get one part of the picture. If you only use subjective coach feedback, like does she understand the game, you get another part.
Okay.
But the data show that the combination of the two was the only reliable predictor of future success.
So it's moving away from who looks like a cyclist today to who has the raw metrics and the mindset to become one tomorrow.
Correct. And it removes the bias. If a girl isn't the loudest or the most aggressive, but her motor tests are off the charts, the data forces the coach to take a second look. It checks the gut feeling.
That makes perfect sense. Transparency seems to be a big part of this too. The Canada Soccer Strategy source emphasized that if a girl gets cut from a squad, she needs to know why.
That is huge for retention. If you get cut because the coach didn't like you, you quit the sport. You feel powerless.
Right.
But if you get cut because your sprint time needs to improve by 0.2 seconds, well, now you have a target. Transparency builds trust, and trust keeps people in the ecosystem.
Okay, so we know why they leave, the toxic water, and we know we're bad at spotting the ones who should stay. Let's talk about the rebuild. How do we redesign the ecosystem?
The sources mention a strategy that sounds simple but seems to be rarely done. Designing with them, not for them.
Yes. It's the nothing about us without us principle. The Big Sister Project is the gold standard here. They didn't just sit in a boardroom full of adults and guess what teenage girls wanted.
What did they do?
They got 82 girls to co-produce the content and the program.
And what did the girls actually say? What did they value that the adults were missing?
They wanted a no-judgment zone. This is crucial. For teenage girls, the fear of social judgment is a primary barrier. It actually blocks motor learning.
Blocks motor learning. How?
If you're afraid of looking stupid, you won't try the hard skill. You won't take the risk. So the reframing sport guide suggests shifting the focus. Instead of just celebrating winning, which is a very zero-sum high-pressure metric, create moments of pride.
Moments of pride. That's a lovely phrase, but help me picture that. How does a coach operationalize moments of pride on a wet Tuesday night training session?
It changes the feedback loop. Instead of asking, did you win the sprint against Sarah, it becomes, did you master that cornering technique we practiced?
Always.
Or did you help your teammate bridge the gap? It allows for internal motivation. It allows you to feel successful even if you didn't cross the line first.
It decouples self-worth from the podium.
Exactly. And they also pointed out practical things. Small details that signal you belong here. Things like having free menstrual products available in the bathrooms.
It seems like such a small logistic detail, but the report argues it sends a huge message.
It signals, we know you are here, we know what you need, and we've planned for it. Versus, oops, we forgot female biology exists.
Wow, yeah.
Secure changing spaces are another big one. If a girl feels exposed or unsafe changing, she's not entering the training session in a flow state, she is entering it in a state of anxiety.
And you can't perform elite athletics when your cortisol is spiked from fear.
Exactly. It's removing that friction we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But we also have to talk about the adults in the room. Because you can have great facilities, but if the coach is still screaming at them like they're drill sergeants, it's not going to work.
Right. This is where the Hvad program comes in. It stands for a Danish acronym regarding sports communities. But the core philosophy is that you don't just train the athlete, you train the ecosystem.
The parents and the coaches.
Yes. The goal is to educate them on the biopsychosocial needs of girls.
Biopsychosocial, that's a bit of a mouthful. Break that down for us.
It sounds academic, but it's really just looking at the whole human. Bio is biology, psycho is psychology, and social is the social environment.
Okay.
It's understanding that a 14-year-old girl is going through different hormonal changes, different emotional regulation developments, and vastly different peer group pressures than a 14-year-old boy.
So if a coach ignores that and just applies the default male training grid, yelling, focusing purely on competition, ignoring social dynamics, they aren't just being ineffective.
They are likely causing harm. They are accelerating that confidence erosion we talked about at the start.
This feels like the right moment to pivot to one of the most important conceptual shifts in this whole stack of research.
The difference between equality and equity.
Yes. Because I think a lot of people use those words interchangeably, but the CAEGAWS source makes a hard distinction.
They do. And it's a vital distinction for anyone in leadership to understand. The classic analogy they use is the shoes. Equality is giving everyone the same pair of shoes.
Which sounds fair in theory. Everyone gets a pair.
Right. But if you have size 10 feet and I have size 6 feet, giving us both a size 8 doesn't help anyone. That's equality without context.
So what is equity?
Equity is giving everyone shoes that fit them. The goal isn't the same input, it's the same opportunity to reach the finish line.
Okay, but let's take that out of the metaphor and into the budget spreadsheet of the Danish Cycling Union. What does giving shoes that fit look like in euros and cents?
It means you might need to distribute resources unequally to get a fair outcome. This is where it gets controversial for some people.
Right, because it looks unfair on paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if we know for the sources that safety and travel logistics are a bigger barrier for girls, maybe due to safety concerns or economic factors, then equity means the DCU might need to subsidize travel for the women's team more than the men's team.
Or providing that equipment bank we mentioned earlier to overcome the pay-to-play barrier.
Precisely. If you just give the women's team the exact same budget as the men's team, the source argues you are ignoring the fact that they are starting from a deficit created by 100 years of history.
That's not fairness, that's just maintenance of the status quo.
Real equity might look like unfair spending in the short term to create a leveled playing field in the long term.
That's where the rubber meets the road. It's easy to say we support women, but are you willing to spend the money to prove it?
Speaking of maintaining the status quo, let's talk about who's actually running the show. Because if we look at the leadership in high-performance sports, it's still pretty male-dominated.
It is. The sources describe a broken pipeline. We have a severe shortage of female coaches and leaders in high performance. And when women do break through, they often face what's called the glass cliff.
The glass cliff. I've heard this term. It's like the glass ceiling's evil cousin.
Essentially. The research suggests that without a clear, supportive pathway, women are often only offered leadership roles in precarious situations, like when a team is failing or a project is in crisis.
So they get handed the steering wheel right as the car is driving off the cliff?
Exactly. And then if they fail, which is highly likely because the situation was already a disaster, it just confirms the bias. People say, see, women can't lead.
So how do we stop setting them up to fail? The sources mention a distinction between mentorship and sponsorship. I always thought those were the same thing.
This is a critical takeaway for any leader listening. Mentorship is giving advice. It's me saying to you, here's how I handled this situation.
Right, which is helpful.
It's good, but it's passive. Sponsorship is active. Sponsorship is a senior leader, often a man given the current demographics, using his political capital to advocate for a woman.
So it's not just good luck, kid. It's walking into a closed-door meeting and saying, she is the right person for this job, and putting your own reputation on the line.
Yes, it's opening doors, not just pointing at them. And there's a massive warning here about tokenism, too. The inclusion unlocks source is fascinating.
What does it say?
It says that diversity, as in just increasing the headcount of women without inclusion, actually lowers performance.
Wait, really? So just hiring a woman to check a box can make things worse?
If you hire her but don't give her power, voice, or support, she becomes a token. She's isolated. That creates friction and conflict. The study shows that to get the real benefits of diversity, the creativity, the new ideas, you need inclusion. She needs to be able to influence decisions, not just sit quietly in the room.
So we've covered the diagnosis, the talent ID, the environment design, and the leadership. It feels like a massive overhaul. Where does an organization even start?
It is a lot, but the sources break it down into a dual-track approach. This is the roadmap for the DCU.
Right. Track 1 is the elite track.
Yes. This is the domain of the national coach. It aligns with Team Denmark's philosophy, human before medalist.
I love that phrasing.
It's realizing that performance is driven by well-being. You don't sacrifice the human to get the medal. You build the human to get the medal.
And track 2 is the ecosystem.
That's governance, transparency, local clubs. That's where you fix the pay-to-play issues and the changing rooms.
You need both.
You absolutely need both. If you fix the national team but the local clubs are still toxic, you have no pipeline. If you fix the clubs but the national team is a meat grinder, you have nowhere for them to go.
It really redefines what we mean by talent.
It does. We used to think of talent as this static gold nugget buried inside a person. You just had to dig it out.
Right.
But this research suggests talent is a product of the environment. Talent is how fast you ride, yes, but it's also how the system develops you. If the environment is toxic, the talent dissolves.
That is such a powerful shift in perspective. Before we wrap up, I know there was one final thought from the research that you wanted to leave everyone with. A bit of a so what for the skeptics out there who might think, well, this is nice, but does it actually win races?
Yes. Sometimes when we talk about women's initiatives, people roll their eyes and think it's just charity work or political correctness. But there was a PNAS study mentioned in our stack that analyzed mixed-gender teams.
What did they find?
It found that teams with men and women produce more novel and impactful solutions than all male teams, period.
So diversity isn't just nice, it's a competitive advantage.
Exactly. Cycling, like many traditional sports, risks stagnation. It risks doing the exact same things it's done for 100 years.
Right.
By redesigning the system for women, by introducing new perspectives, new training methods, new leadership styles, we aren't just helping the girls. We might actually be saving the sport of cycling from itself. We're injecting innovation that benefits everyone.
So by solving the puzzle for the 43% who leave, we unlock a better version of the sport for the 100% who stay.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
That is a fantastic place to leave it. A huge thank you to the researchers behind these reports, from Let Her Dream to the Big Sister Project.
Yeah.
There is so much valuable insight here.
Absolutely.
And for you listening, whether you're a coach, a parent, or just someone who loves the sport, think about that tank water. What's one thing, maybe it's just how you give feedback or advocating for a budget shift, that you can change in your local environment?
It usually starts with just one conversation.
Exactly. Thanks for diving in with us.
Always a pleasure.
See you in the next deep dive.